Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Giovanni Brusto, and this is the Media Mogul News Hour. I am here today with Ray Thompson of Rich Hair Club. How are you, Ray?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, so first, if you could tell me, well, one, tell me about Rich Hair Club.
Well, it's Hair Rich Club.
Ja, I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. It's
I feel
Hair
like I'm
Rich
being
Club.
dyslexic right now. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. My name is Ray Thompson. I'm the owner of the Hair Rich Club. We've been established since
You did
2016.
the same thing. You just flipped it around.
What I need
No, I
to
was
do?
just kidding. You said it. No, I was saying you said Hair Rich Club.
Yeah, it's hair because it say on here it say Rich Hair Club.
Continue. Continue.
So it's Hair Rich Club. We always like to say we the HRC gang. So Hair Rich Club was actually established in 2016. I am the owner. Um, it was established originally as a hair replacement clinic, but then I kind of slowly but surely just branched fully into wigs and online education. So that's kind of how the business was created of being an online platform.
Okay. And so, about how long have you been in business?
Since 2016. I am a
Oh,
licensed
nice.
hairstylist, so I've been licensed for 21 years. Am I
Oh,
telling my
okay.
age?
It's all
So
right.
I actually end up just shifting and retiring myself from behind the chair. So I'm no longer currently a hairstylist, and I'm a full-time wig maker and beauty educator.
Okay. Well, for one, look, it keeps you off of your feet. I can't imagine, God, how many. I mean, do you want to, share like how many hours a day that might have been?
Yeah, very long hours. I used to do between anywhere between 13 to 17 people easy a day. Like I was super swamped on top of
Ooh.
having a salon. So it was definitely a lot of work. It was a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely. And for one, as it pertains to wig making, um, in general, so we tend to know more people who are who are hairstylists. It's not too often that I run across folks who are in that field. And of all the things to make the transition from or transition to from being behind the chair, I interviewed someone not too long ago who she decided to in getting from behind the chair during COVID to do a create a coffee shop. Um, yeah, a little different. How you all make these transitions. Um, I find interesting. But and for one, so everyone, look, I've interviewed a lot of different people. This is my first time with someone who is a wigologist. So I think that both of us are probably going to be learning a little something um,
Definitely so.
today. So what I wanted to know, what type of barriers are there in getting into um, this field
Into the wig
outside of
making industry.
yes, outside of hairstyling, which is a little easier to do. Um, but yes, how is it getting into wig making?
Well, I think that it's just like any other market. It's definitely I don't I don't want to say oversaturated. Let's just say it's very saturated. Um, you just have to really just make yourself stand out. I feel like personality is first in any type of small business. So with that being said, no matter what you're doing, like you have to not be afraid to like get in front of the people and kind of let them know what you offer. Um, I'm very open about like my wig wearing, and I do stuff like this, like come up. You know what I mean? Because my biggest thing is letting people know that you can wear wigs. They can look realistic, very natural,
Right.
and they can be easy for you to wear. But you have to like really just find your niche. Um, I had to find my niche, and this what I just did. That's kind of my
Hmm.
niche. People know me for easy wearing wigs that are really pretty.
I mean, that's a good way to. I mean, that's like a good marketing tool, right? It's a good conversation starter.
Yeah, it definitely is because majority of people they don't know, especially you see wigs online and you're like, oh, I want that, but it's so much more. So I like to educate.
Hmm.
I make sure that I do lives. I have a YouTube channel where I just try to give tips to people. But I definitely think, like, in a market that is so full of so many wig makers, you definitely have to make yourself just stand out. And whatever that is going to be, some people use their styling as a thing.
Yeah.
I use the fact that I've been licensed for 20 years, so I'm trusted. Uh,
Yeah.
People know that they're like, I know Ray, and now my name is becoming more global, which I'm really excited about.
Absolutely.
So people are knowing me outside of my area to say, okay, she's trusted. I trust her because of these things. So that's kind of what I just try to push. It does take a while to break into, but consistency is the key.
Yes, as is the case with with most things. Something I came across recently. I don't know if you might have seen this. It was in the fall last year. Um, Apparently, there are Instagram influencers who were celebrity wig stylists who have branched off into doing their own wig making and selling online. And
Yes.
so this caught me off guard because apparently the Shade Room does an investigation series. And they had caught someone who I suppose was taking money in Georgia. And like the attorney general had gotten involved. And it appeared that I guess they started working with celebrities. And then by having that like name recognition, they were able to parlay into a business, but then I suppose wasn't able to, I guess, keep that type of um, they didn't have the infrastructure, to do that type of
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, do you hear of these stories of other people who, come to you and are, say, afraid of, doing business because, I heard this or, this I saw. And that was the first time that I had um, heard of such a thing because, you see these people working with certain folks and you would think surely they would not be next to so and so on television, or on the red carpet and pulling these stunts off the internet. But, apparently so.
Apparently so. Everything that glitters is not gold. I always like to think the most important people are the people that you've never met. Like me and you. Um, those are the people that people overlook. And with social media, I think that the platforms that these hairstylists can create, or influencers, because even influencers do that. They create these platforms and they just, like you said, they don't live up to them. A lot of times they don't have the manpower. The other thing is,
Right.
a lot of people spend their money before they really make it. So they're making this money, but I'm not really into name brands, but
Hmm.
I may buy myself something nice here and there. But they're trying to keep up with these things, and it's a lifestyle that they're creating online, but they're not really living up to it. And for
Seems to
me,
make sense.
yeah, my integrity is the only thing that I can pride myself on outside of actually having a skill. So for me, business is important, and I like to be honest. And if it's something that I can't do, I would just rather tell you instead of, like, taking your money, creating a bad name, and then now you're in the shade room.
Yeah, and so look, and I was sorry for like smiling when I was telling the story because it's just that they're known for like writing articles and pieces like shady stuff. I just wasn't expecting like an inside edition investigation. So
It's
one, I was
very
laughing.
serious.
Yeah, I did say they did a few. I mean, one, I laughed when I saw that, and then I'm sitting and watching this. I said, okay, now nobody's really been checking like the Instagram influencers. So I said, this is a whole new thing that's getting ready to start. And I've always told folks, a lot of us have to do, obviously social media is there. We have to, use it for work and whatnot. But I've always said that, for one, the feds follow people online, right? And like stuff that doesn't look right. Um, you know, uh, I make jokes. I'm like, look, keep it up. You keep posting this type of stuff, like, whether it's a lifestyle where it's not clear what someone does for a living, you know,
Right.
those types of things. They're looking. And it's just that when I saw that investigation, I said, oh, now Instagram is getting ready to be busted wide open. Um,
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's a lot of scams going on. I do try to stay connected with my customer base. So like on my website, like I have a chat and I have actual real life people who work for the
okay.
company who can answer questions and things. So that way, like if you ever go to my website, shameless plug www.hairrichclub.com. But if you go to my website, you can actually chat before you purchase.
Which is
I
very
wanted
good.
to create that because I was like, sometimes you just need to ask a question, and
Right.
you just need an answer. So you usually get a response within definitely 24 hours, but they try to respond sooner than that. Try to just kind of, keep that communication there. But
Right.
you have to really be careful now. You have to really, and it's almost like you feel like you are doing your research, you're following these people, you start to trust these people, and then you get scammed.
Right. Well, for everyone following, just so that you would know, you of course came by recommendation or suggestion by Misty Blanco,
Yes.
who I work with. So yes, you have been vetted. So everyone, Ray is a good person to
I
follow, do business with. Hey, I heard your name for months before we ever had a chance to
am
speak.
good.
So and of course, all good things. So I'm glad that finally happened. And look, as far as having that online or the virtual chat on your website, the price of custom wigs are not cheap, and so before pulling out a certain number, it would be nice to be able to touch bases with someone, ask questions. Shout out to you for making sure that that happens. Look, the investigation that I mentioned, look, someone, I think she left to go to another state, to go to this person's shop in Georgia, to go see him. She spotted him and he like went and ran and like hid in the back.
That's bad business.
Yeah.
I'm actually in a wig group, and it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that going on. And like you said, I mean, you just got to try to do your research. There are reviews. Don't overlook the reviews.
Right.
um, People leave reviews for that reason. There was another girl in Florida where she had been sending people synthetic units, but she was advertising human hair, like pretty wigs like this. And I was
Oh.
like, wow.
Yeah, I wonder how she thought she was going to get away with that. Seems to be a little bit of that's a little obvious one, I think.
It's a
Um,
shame.
yeah, and sidebar, that was something else that happened to learned recently. So I was today years old when I found out that comb waste was a thing.
What's that?
Co- Um, for in creating what's considered, I suppose, the lower quality human hair wigs, um, comb waste is used. And so you'll have places like, I want to say, I think South Korea is one. And so you'll have women who will save the hair that will either be in the sink or in their comb for 3 years and sell it over there for sometimes as low as $1. And so that is actually what makes up some um, packaged hair.
I didn't know that. I never knew that. We learn something new every day. You said we was gonna learn
That was
something.
that was actually that was a gaffe. I meant to say that I was going to learn something, but okay, I'm glad that I lived I lived up to
I'm
that
like,
one.
what?
Yes, comb waste. Yeah, that's an actual thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But but again, that's of the the lower quality side. I had done a little research into just where certain qualities of hair came from, which leads me to my next question. I've heard a lot of beauty supply store owners and certain shops make their complaints about being able to purchase products from distributors. I have seen a company in Oakland saying that the issue that this person has for the products that she makes, whether they're curling irons, things of that nature, the distributor would say that there's no longer a use for it, and then they would turn around and create a knockoff, and that would be their way of pushing them out of the market.
Mm.
And I was just wondering, in being in the business, do you ever hear of such things regarding strong arming folks um, out of the community? These are some black brands who had made such complaints
Well, I know. I
in
just seen
trying to compete.
Yeah, I just seen a video where they were talking about a product, a hair like lace product or whatnot, and the Korean or Asian stores were basically getting knockoffs. I guess the biggest issue is there are a lot of people who order from AliExpress or Alibaba,
Hmm.
which there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that, but you do
they're
have
in
to
China.
do research, and then you have black companies like myself. My product is manufactured right here in the United States. It's actually I have 7 products in my line.
I
It's called
fixed the
the hair.
title.
Huh? Oh,
I said I fixed the
thank you so much.
title. You're welcome. Sorry.
I have 7 products in my line. I have a shampoo, a conditioner, I have a heat protectant. The
Okay.
heat, I have actually 2 heat protectants because one is a shine spray and one is a serum. And I have 2 mousses, one for molding, sculpting, and then the other one is for curls. And then I have a anti-itching growth oil. I think the thing is people have to just start understanding quality. It's important to understand quality. Would you like to use, I'm gonna think of just a brand. Would you like to use Suave? Or let's compare the two because it's levels to this, right?
Mhm,
Would
right.
you use White Rain or Cream of Nature?
Okay. Right. Understandable.
So when it comes to the product lines, and it's like, yeah, you think like, oh well, I'm gonna get this because it's quote unquote cheaper, or you go into a store and you know that a particular item is regularly marked at 20, but this store is selling it for 10, you should be skeptical. You
Right.
know, um, I think as being a supplier myself and having my own product line, it's very important to educate your clients on the difference. Um, I have plenty of girls that hit me up and they're like, "Hey, how can I start my own product line? Where should I look?" And I hear people, business coaches,
Hmm.
tell these girls, "Go to Alibaba. You can start a line there." Blah blah blah.
Interesting.
I feel like Alibaba is good for certain things, but I feel like when you're really trying to get into the hair care field of it, it's
Hmm.
not the place you want to go. So, with that being said, people just they have to do their research and you have to educate yourself because they are trying to push out the smaller brands or the smaller black owned companies because they have more
Yes.
money to do this,
Right.
right? But at the same time the product is not as good, so you're losing quality. And I would say I wouldn't ever not want to sacrifice my quality for a few dollars.
Right.
It's almost like I'd rather eat Private Select than the generic brand of cereal any day,
Right.
So it's just that is very important. And I'm like I said, I'm not shading anyone because I know it's plenty of girls that go to Alibaba. I've actually have went to Alibaba for some of my things that I do wholesale. But
Hmm.
when it comes to my hair care line, mm-mm, mm-mm.
And so what you're doing is you're actually solving a lot of the community gripes and complaints conversations that we've had for years, arguably decades, about how is it that we're such a huge consumer of hair care products and don't have stake in it ourselves. And so it's important to find those who do, those who are into wig making, etc. Which, by the way, I'm big on statistics and whatnot, and so I couldn't even find any for black wig makers, probably because I think the numbers probably that small that no one's bothered to quantify that um, into anything. But again, in regards to what little stake that we have in hair care products, as black businesses. I also had found out that apparently a lot of this started in throughout the 60s when Korean owned hair care stores. It started appearing here. And it largely had to do with the fact that, a lot of people tend to describe this in conspiratorial terms,
Right.
but, there were things that actually happened, like we banned hair from China. This was us trying to stop communism. We literally said the verbiage was not to have any communist hair. And so, because we couldn't get anything from China, then that incentivized practically the only other place, which would have been South Korea. And so they have been, the mainstays here for the longest. And, you have plenty of instances of people, whether it's documentaries on camera, et cetera, who say that, they do admit that they do a lot of purchasing of, the smaller brands, often the black brands, and will put out of business whatever products that they were selling just to go and make a knockoff of the exact same thing.
Wow.
So, people didn't necessarily have this, in their head, you're not crazy. These are actual things, so it is important to, make sure that we highlight and, um, try to patronize our own.
Definitely. Definitely so.
And and as it relates to celebrities in wigs, I would like to know, who do you think has the best? Who would you say?
Celebrity who has the best wig?
Yes, best wig,
The
best
best.
wig game.
It's gonna be Misty Blanco in a minute because she messed some people.
Okay,
I
good answer.
mean, um, I see, plenty of celebrities. I really like their hair, and some of their hairstylists I'm actually following. Um, but yeah, it's gonna be Misty in a minute. She's gonna be the top celebrity with the best wigs.
Nice. I like I like that answer. And so there's a lot of influencers, celebrities, of course, who have wig brands of their own. And as you said, there's different levels to this. And I wanted to have you to gauge and judge what level you would say that these are on. What are your opinions of three that come to my mind off the top of my head would be I know that Portia Williams of the Real Housewives of Atlanta has a wig line.
Okay.
Um, Vivica Fox and Jessica Simpson. How would you say that those women's products are from a professional standpoint?
Well, I haven't tried any of their products. I've only seen. Um,
From a casual observation.
yeah, Portia's wigs always look amazing. Um, I haven't seen Jessica Simpson in a while, so I'm not sure if she's doing wigs or if she's doing like extension clip-ins or whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, and Vivica Fox, she kind of hit or miss to me. Like, um, she does a combination of wigs. Like I know she does like synthetic pieces too as well. And I'm personally not really a fan of synthetic units because they're never really plucked. Like I have a wig maker friend. She has a beautiful synthetic wig business, but
Hmm.
she does the work to them. So
Right.
if I had to just guess, I would probably say Portia.
Okay.
Cause she really wear a weave too, like
Hmm.
that's what she do. Vivica, if I would say maybe the bigger business, it probably is Vivica Fox. She's been in the hair industry for a while. Vivica is
Oh yeah. Come
Fox's
to think
brand
of
is
it,
very popular. Yeah.
I'm pretty.
Um,
Come to think of it, I think like my whole adult life. I'm pretty sure. I didn't think to look to see how long. But yeah, I feel like I've seen her face in stores most of this
Ever.
millennium. I don't know when she started.
Yeah, she has a huge line, and I guess I haven't seen like her human hair. I'm not sure if she ever does like human hair wigs. Like I said, majority of the ones that I have seen have been
Mhm.
synthetic. And let me say this too. Sometimes hair stores don't always reflect products in the best light. So,
Mhm.
what may look nice in one way may not always be displayed in another way either. So,
Right. Understood. And
mhm.
so you mentioned doing, working on education, regarding hair care and wig making. So tell me about Wig Out. Is it Wig Out Wednesdays?
Wig Out Wednesdays. I actually
Yes.
changed it to Wigiana Wednesdays.
Oh, okay.
My name is Wigiana. I
Which
actually
I love
changed
that
the
name, by
name.
the way.
Thank
I
you.
absolutely love that name.
It's
I
funny.
saw that and I said, I'm going to like her.
It's funny how I got this name. Just maybe a little encouragement for somebody who may be watching this. This name was like a name that I was actually kind of slandered and kind of got. I had a situation that had occurred, like blew up on social media, and it was like blew up in my area, which I'm from Ohio. So
Hmm.
everybody, I got, I mean, I don't know how many friends now, but I had like 2,600 friends, and the young lady who slandered my name, she kind of gave me this name, and she was making a joke out of me. And she was like, "Oh, you do those wigs and this," and I was like, "What?" So she called me Wigiana, and I thought it was cute. I was like, "That's cute."
I could
So
see how this could start that way.
right,
Um,
it was really funny, and I got a trademark now. So Wigiana is my brand. You
that is
know,
the best revenge.
yeah. And I was like, I said, yeah, so let me ever see her post that again. And I just may not post it. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. But I definitely took lemons and made
You
lemonade
should.
with that. Yeah. So far as the education, I mean, I have a lot of things that I plan to do this year. By me having the 20 years of experience, there's so many things that I can do. So I'm actually
A
working on
lot you've
that.
seen and a lot you can tell.
Yeah, like I really I want to do an ebook, which is one of the things I'll be working on soon,
Okay.
which to how to retire yourself from behind the chair. I get a lot of I get message it floors me. I get messages from hairstylists that's like way more seasoned than me.
Hmm.
Like, how did you do it? How did you do it? And it's funny because it's kind of like a cry. You think like, well, if you're making money, why would you not want to do something that you make money and you're good at? But I think
Right.
for a hairstylist, after a while, it's not about the money. It's about the fact the time you're losing with your family,
Hmm.
with your kids, missing out on events and
And
things like
even career progression as
yeah, and you
well.
just be like, okay, well, what can I do to shift? And they get scared, and you don't gotta be scared. You just gotta do it. You gotta believe in God. You just gotta do it. And when they ask me, they're like, "Well, how'd you do it?" I'm like, "I planned, and I just stepped out on faith." So far as the education, I got a lot of stuff that I'm gonna be working on to produce, and that is one
Hmm.
of the things outside of just the skill set for people to be able to learn. You don't have to be licensed, of course, to take these classes,
Hmm.
but you being licensed will definitely help. And it's going to
Right.
be all online based, so you'll be able to actually purchase the download online. You'll get a download, and then you can watch it as much as you want, and
Nice.
just get educated and get informed. That's another thing. It's a lot of unprofessionalism going on in the beauty industry right now, and we just got to kind of take that back. We can't.
Like, you
Yeah,
know,
we can't keep not
leaving my
shampooing
head
the
and
hair,
leaving my head and coming back 45 minutes with hot Cheeto.
not shampooing, not doing. Like that's
Hmm.
it's unsanitary, and it's just unprofessional, and I'm not sure where
I mean,
in.
it's always a good thing to teach professionalism in business for any industry. And I'll admit, listen, I would, if there's an ebook, I'd read it. I have nothing to do with this field, But as someone like who, so I study economics, and so just for understanding how understanding more about this industry, how this works, and even as you're trying to help others with making a career progression into something else, versus standing behind the chair until you have gray hair. That's just good to know. Like these are actually things that affect our community. If we have a lot of people, who are, being hairstylists, one, being able to teach people how to get into the field and to, have their off ramp into something else. That's a whole economic side that I think is very valuable to be teaching to others. So yes, even I would look at that.
I'm glad. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I also wanted to know, regarding these, let me see. So for getting into the industry, one thing I've wondered about, there's been a debate recently. I know that there are certain states and certain cities that want to have people to be licensed to be hair braiders. Again, not the professional here, but do you think that that should be so? Should you be licensed? One of the arguments is that it is a barrier for either getting into the field. Some argue that it's unnecessary, and that at short it keeps people from making money. But just wondering what you thought about that.
Um, I'm kind of like on the fence with it. I feel like I do feel like it's something that they created to make money because for African American people, that is our culture. We braid. They've been doing that for centuries, you know.
Right.
Um, I do feel like as being a professional, I do feel like it's good to educate yourself because it's people that braid really good, but they don't understand the concept of it. So they're pulling people's hair out, um, braiding extremely tight, causing balding and things like that. So I'm kind of on the fence with both. I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm with this whole thing. They should have to go to school for 1,500 hours and all that. But I
Hmm.
feel like, once you start saying that you're a professional, there should be certain things that you should have to do. Even if it's just taking an 8-hour class, you know,
Right.
to learn, about the hair, about the scalp, because those things are ultimately important. I had a young lady that came to me because her stylist was using edge control and Suave shampoo, and somewhere along the line, dirty combs, and the product had started to build up in her follicles. So she had folliculitis, I think that's how you say it, but it's like
Folliculitis.
inflammation of the
Yeah.
follicle, right?
Hmm.
So her hair started to fall out. And this young lady was a braider. But with that being said, by her not being educated, she didn't even realize what she had done. So eventually, what happened, it was her whole scalp was inflamed, her hair started to fall out, and it was just a mess. So I do feel like education is a must.
Yeah.
Like I said, even if it's just, hey, we're gonna take you through the basics, show
Right.
you scalp disorders. It's important. It's important. Um,
And especially if you're going to be in certain environments. I mean, it's a difference of, say, being in a shop and being in your house. Like, there are people who are fine for things in their home. That to me, it seems to be a little bit extreme. Someone like voluntarily went to someone's house versus going into a shop. Does this warrant this type, finding again, this is what I'm asking a professional this, to me that doesn't make sense, but I've listened to this argument, for years. Another is, there are people who, you can also get fined and in trouble for, babysitting in your house in some places, of similar, absurd legislation. I think, like, I think that, again, it's hard to, punish people for things that are human nature, things that are cultural.
right,
This has
right,
been happening forever.
right.
What do you mean grandma's going to jail for watching someone's children? It doesn't make any sense. It may not be jail as a punishment. I wouldn't be surprised if that's, like, I don't know, a fourth offense.
No,
If that
seriously,
could actually happen.
seriously.
So good, good. I did want to have some of that, professional experience there. And so, hey, as someone who's a wigologist, creating custom wigs, there are many people who might ask the obvious, at least to them, as in, why should they choose a custom wig? As you said, what's ready to go inside of a store may not necessarily, fare well out in public or in other light. So I wanted to have you to explain the benefits. I know of a couple, but I'll hand that to you.
Okay, well, get ready for this ride. So the first reason, not only why you should choose a custom wig, but why you should choose me as your custom wig maker is because I can actually show you how to properly wear the wigs. Again, I have a YouTube channel. It is I am Wigiana. What's on the shirt? It's the you can type that into YouTube. And I also it's the same tag for TikTok as well and Instagram. With that being said,
Oh, I hadn't seen your TikTok yet. Okay, I
yeah,
missed
I'm
that.
on TikTok. I,
I'll do
I,
that
I do
next.
all type of videos. I'm like the cool, funny, educated wig maker, right?
Okay.
But I would say the purpose for choosing the custom made wigs is the fact that I don't know if people are really seeing like you see these 29.99 wigs and you're like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
getting that, and they look like this. They look like
Hmm.
this, but when you get it, they don't look like this.
Okay.
They don't look like this, and that's the difference. So when people say, well, gosh, your wigs are really high, and I'm like, no, you're paying for quality and you're paying for custom. So with a custom made wig, they all, let me say this, they should come ready to wear when it's custom. You can
Hmm.
get them in different sizes. So for people who have really small heads, you can get a small wig. If you have a really large head, the largest wig that I've made for someone, it was 25 and a half circumference, which is really large.
Okay.
Um, the largest wig head that I have is a 24. So I had to actually build the block head up and make it larger to fit this person's
Oh
head.
man.
So that's the perk of getting a custom made unit. Another thing with custom made units, you can get them as full as you want. Um, Meaning you can add as much hair as you want. You can get them in different colors, different styles. I do short wigs, which is um, kind of not really that common when it comes to wig makers. Because first of all, let me say this: a lot
Hmm.
of wig makers are not licensed hairstylists. You don't have to be licensed to make wigs. So that is
Good
the
point.
advantage that you have of coming
Learning
to
something.
Hair Rich Club because you have licensed hairstylists who are actually creating these looks, which means that their cutting skills are going to be better than a person who has no idea of what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
So, like, if you guys go to my page on Instagram or even TikTok, you'll see short units that I've created that look like real short hairstyles. So, it's a lot of perks when you go custom. Um, and customization, let me say this, it does not always mean that the wig is completely made from scratch. Customization is bleaching the knots, plucking the knots, making it look real. So you can also get stock units that are customized too. So it is good
Okay.
to be informed. And like I said, if you ever go to my website, www.hairrichclub.com, you can always click that chat button and someone will respond back if you need help with services.
Okay. Very good. I learned something there.
Good.
Now, I would like to know about do you recall hearing about the great bonnet debate of 2021?
Who started that? Was that what's her name? Was it Tammy?
Monique. No, there
Monique
was
started
Monique.
that? Okay.
Yes. Tammy was responding. Tammy Roman was responding to Monique. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So for those out there who don't know, this comedian Monique had a rant one day saying that she was tired of seeing people in the airport or women in the airport with bonnets on, of which I would say that I would comment. However, if it were not for this video, I might be in a do-rag. So I don't think that I'm in a place to judge. And you look at many people who said that, Monique, we understand. your point, but some of us also remember the Monique of 20 years ago, and before she decided to be so prim and proper, and who is this person, and where did she come from?
Right.
But I wanted to know what you thought. What I want to know what your thoughts are on this. Look, acceptable black hair is has always been a topic, that's a big deal. And then, of course, while we're talking about all the effort, that goes into, hair care, um, folks don't necessarily have the time before taking kids to school, etc. And this is how this happens. And so, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, kind of. But what do you think?
It's a thin line. It's a very thin line. Um, if you see me at the gym, I may have a bonnet on or scarf on. I'm working out. Um, if you might see me on a post office run, I might have a scarf on with a hood on trying to hide. But I do feel like as a black woman, it is important to, wear your crown with glory. And, when you going out and stuff, like, take the time. Like, it's plenty of things that girls can do to be cute without walking around with a bonnet on.
Mhm.
And I think it may have just came across the way she said it. But for example, I had an assistant in Dayton, Ohio, and I actually kind of fell back on her because I didn't want to say it to her at first, but I really liked her, so I brought her back and I addressed it. But she used to come down to my salon with a bonnet, and I didn't like it. And the reason why I didn't like it was because, and that's why I said it depends. It's a thin line because for me, and it's just my opinion, it's
Mhm.
about the setting. When I go to the gym, I'm working out, I'm being sweaty anyway. I'm take this wig off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when I go to work, even if my hair is not all fabulous looking, I want to still look presentable.
Right.
If I'm in an airport, I want to still look halfway decent, even if I put a baseball hat on with my hair or whatever. So I think for a woman, it's a little bit different than for a guy per se.
Hmm.
But for a woman, it is important that you take pride when you go out. You should at least try to get yourself together.
Yeah, that is why I asked you that question.
Let me ask you this though. As a man, if you see a woman out like that, what impression do you get?
So to take this a little further back, um, so like Misty knows me from being in politics, and I talk about how my journey has changed. I spent like the last 10 years in studying poverty, crime, and like the other side of the tracks, which I said that I knew absolutely nothing about these communities. Basically, like when I first started, my business partner at the time was like, "Shut up." She just don't repeat that again. She was like, you act like you act like a gentrifier, like doing a bulldoze stuff. Shut up and listen to people. With that being said, as someone who's had to, in perspective, to learn, the plight of other folks, etc. I understand why it happens. I do not like to judge. What would my knee jerk reaction be? As someone who, you know, sometimes would, I don't know, like overdress going to events and stuff. I would possibly side eye. Again, I don't like judging. And look, like in the airport, like everybody's in the airport. That's the other thing. I always feel like you never know who you're going to see. You never know who you're going to run into. Just in general, like I was door knocking for someone who's running for office, and I just remember going to someone's house. I don't even live in the city. And the guy says, "Hey, I remember you. You were at dinner with such and such person, like a few weeks ago." And I said, "Okay, yeah, it was just my candidate." But well, it's a good thing that I was behaving or whatever. Um, but just saying. So I guess I have, it's again, don't like speaking for women. But I thought I'd bring, the topic up. But in looking at it, if I see someone in a bonnet, and look, like I'm from DC, and so you would see folks. You're on the train, like miles away from home. To me, that it's one thing if you like, getting in the car and you're like going a couple of feet inside of a post office, but the subway in front of folks like dressed up and going to work and stuff looks weird and out of place.
I just think that we have as people have gotten so lax on things. If you think back to when our parents, back, my mom is 67. They used to not leave the house without lipstick. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? The women took pride in themselves. The men used to always wear suits, like, and of course, we don't live in that era anymore, but
right,
take pride in yourself, because for me, they already have a stereotype of what my skin complexion and what my voice sounds like. So when I step into places, I don't want to be that with the bonnet on too. Like,
right. And that's the other thing, it becomes, is it that every time, there are people who say that, is it that every time that we step out the door, open our mouth, and we have to be representative of the community? Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of how this works.
yeah,
I look at every day I make posts on social media, and there's always that person who is to make this a reflection of the entire Black community.
right, right.
There's certain topics I don't like touching just
I'm
because
here.
I don't want to have these arguments.
Right,
you
right.
know the shooting, or the person with more than three children, and you all want to have a cultural debate, in the comments, where you'd probably be hit if this occurred like face to face. Knock it off.
For real.
um,
No, seriously. I just think that we have to, as a community, and I don't want to like single out Black girls at all, because of course I'm a Black girl. But like you say, it's like you gotta say that, because if you don't, then somebody's like, well, what is she saying? But
right.
I'm not gonna say I don't care, but it's my opinion to say that I think that, yeah, we should. Let me say, when I had my salon, I had a dread specialist there. He did
Okay.
guys look just like you, right?
Mhm.
And some of these guys, I don't know if it was a dating thing or not. I can't even really say, but some of them would come in and they wasn't groomed. And his first thing he would say was "Black man," and they kind of start talking. He'd be like, "Black man, you have to represent yourself a certain way. You can't be walking around here, hair all over your head, lint all in it, because it's
Right.
already a stereotype that they have of you. So keep yourself groomed, because now you try now what you're doing is you planting a whole nother seed in their head when they see you, and they like, man,
Right.
brother look nice, he clean, and now they got to give you a certain level of respect. So yeah, it's important for us to do that. It
And
is.
can I, just to take this a step further, whether it is the hair salon, whether it's the barber shop, if let's say you normalize that, right, and you had people who were regularly cycling in and out, who might not have been groomed, first, and so this is sort of how like government and politics work. So you have someone who's standing across the street and they're looking at who's going in and out of the door. And then it becomes a thing of, this block, this neighborhood has these people, who are, I don't know, they walk, look at them. You see the guys here, you look like trouble. Like raise the taxes on that block. Like there are people who actually do that.
Yeah.
That's exactly how that happens. They look at that block, literally target that one block, and try to, move the two Black businesses there away. And it starts with little things like that. Sometimes I like to tap friends and whatnot on the shoulder. And I'm like, look, for the leaders in this neighborhood, you might want to say something to some of the troublemakers. You might not own anything. You might not think that anyone cares. And so therefore that's something else. Folks feel that no one cares, so they'll walk around, any kind of way. But, we're always being watched. And again, you could have someone who's looking and saying, okay, they don't care. I want to steamroll the neighborhood,
Mm.
and then everyone will be gone. And it starts with little things like, appearance walking around. I hate to say that, it's unfortunate that it's that way, but, you know, such is life.
I'm gonna make sure I definitely follow you on all platforms because I was looking at your page and I was like, oh, he got interesting topics on here. You know what I mean? And I was
Thank you.
like you said, topics that some people don't want to touch, and it's necessary. It's necessary.
It is. So look, both of us moved to the South. You left Ohio. You're in Texas. Even though I didn't go too far, but there's still it's a huge difference of me being here in Virginia near the capital of the Confederacy from DC. Um, and it's caused me to think a lot more on some of these topics. You know, uh, Race is a much heavier topic in a place like this versus, where, I don't know, slave capital, sort of the South, versus, where I was from. So I try to make sure that, I have discussions on making sure that we're represented as best as possible. And hence me having a conversation with you on, helping the community in, looking better when they're stepping outside.
So what's the question?
Yeah, just saying, this is, that's part of the reason, um, for us to do it. And so, look, this ebook. Um, Heavy, I know that you said that you wanted to do one just for the sake of keeping you accountable. Do you think that there's a set date that you would like to have one out so that I can like tap you on the shoulder every so often and remind you? Want to
Actually,
take a stab at a date?
how to retire yourself from behind the chair. I said that I wanted to release that for my birthday, which is April 1st.
Oh,
Yeah, I want to release that for my birthday. I think it'll be good because it'll actually April 1st would actually put me at a year from being behind the chair. So it's like
oh, perfect.
my anniversary. It's my birthday, but it's actually like my anniversary date too. So I want to say I think my last day that I was working behind the chair uh, was March the 30th or something of last year.
Okay.
So yeah, I was like, you know what? I was thinking about that today, and I was like, you need to come up with a date that you want to release it, and I think it's going to be that day.
See, that question was meant. It was meant to be. You're already thinking about that. Yes. Okay. So I think that I'll tap you on the shoulder maybe a month before then. Have we started? Are we getting close?
Yes, yes, it's important. It's important.
Yeah. I mean that's a story I would absolutely love to to hear to hear more of. Um, because hey, I would like to, give some advice to some other people, share the advice with some other people, get them off of their feet. I'm pretty sure some folks would appreciate being able to sit down like an extra, 12 hours out of the day, maybe than
Seriously,
before.
definitely so.
And so, lastly, so we've had some interesting hair news over the last, say, 3 years in regarding to black hair. I'm not sure if you've heard of I think it's the Crown Act, whereby hair discrimination has just now become illegal. How that's the case now versus before, but I think that it's only illegal in about 7 or 8 states right now. But this first started, I think it was in 2019, the Crown Act. And I just remember the first time, where you cannot be fired or discriminated against based on having ethnic hair is the description, which of course is vague, but, for obvious reasons. I remember the first time I had heard this, I was reading comments about it and seeing all of these people laughing, saying that, there's like so little discrimination today that folks are making stuff up. And so I had to explain it to people. This is an actual thing.
Yeah, it is.
I handled union complaints years ago, and I knew of people who worked for TSA who were, fired for literally having dreads
Wow.
and nothing else. This was how many years ago was this? 14. But still, that happened. But do you remember the kid who had his hair cut off, who
Hmm.
was wrestling like right there on the mat, right
Yep.
there on the mat in the act?
Yep.
I think what did that call a foul and say come here and like ask his hair off?
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah. So as someone who has been doing working in with black hair for as long as you have. For one, like, what do you think of the fact that we're just now getting to this place where you can't get in trouble for your hair?
I don't think it should be allowed because I don't think it's not kind of it's kind of one of those things like why is this a topic? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you can't help what type of hair you have, like,
right,
and I mean, it goes back to hair color. Hair color is only offensive when it's worn by black girls. Um,
yeah,
reds and purples only come off as ghetto or loud when it's worn by a person of color. But
right,
if it's a Caucasian girl with color, oh, she a punk rocker, or which is it's just not fair. It's like, why is this a topic? Um, I don't think it should ever be allowed because I don't think it should be a topic. It's like
yeah,
it's not really something. It's almost like saying because your skin, well, you light skin, so you can't like it's crazy, but of course they make laws and we gotta go with them, right? But
I mean, I'll say, and you can speak to this, experience wise. I mean, there was a time where, having locks was seen as unprofessional. I mean, I remember being younger in high school and just this felt like it was a big debate. Like, if you lock your hair, will you be able to work? You know,
right.
Here's a list of, fields that you can't be in, if that is the case. I'm My birthday's tomorrow. I'll 36.
Your
I don't think
birthday
I'm
is
saying that.
tomorrow.
It is.
Oh, happy birthday! Tomorrow my stepdaughter's birthday.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
he said my birthday. You so humble. He said my birthday is tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was like, do I want to say the number out loud? But yeah. Um, but I recall, having those conversations about, whether it's professional, to be locked and, will you be able to work? And it's just looking at it looking at that topic today versus then, it's just hard to imagine that, that was a thing. But said hair discrimination would have been a lot, this law could have been used possibly back then. And again, in having this conversation, like, people do say that, this is made up, why is this a thing? You would be surprised. There have been cases about this
It
um,
has been. I think
since it's happened.
I kind of get, what they say with locks, but the thing about locks, they have advanced so much. There, it's not the. I think we had this thing in our own brain, like locks are like dirty looking, they're unkept, but that's not the case. Like people really take their time out, they go get their hair done, and the locks really look nice. Um, and again, for let's just say those Haitians,
Hmm.
say, well, what you can't get a job because that's how you wear your hair. I do still think, kind of going back to the bonnet thing, it's a grooming thing. However you
Right.
wear it, you got a big beard. It ain't nothing wrong with having a big beard. Big beards
Hmm.
look very nice on guys. Actually, women love them, right? But
Hmm.
keeping it groomed is important. I'm sure you wouldn't be running around here and your hair looking all crazy. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
groom yourself. So it's just, I think, if
I
anything,
think I shaved about 15 minutes before coming to
yeah,
this.
it's just like, however you wear your hair, as long as it looks groomed. Hold on, I went to Walgreens and
Hmm.
I was offended a little bit. It was a colored girl in there working the pharmacy window, and she was natural, and I love pretty natural colored curly hair, but it looked like she rolled out the bed and went to work, and I was like, it has to stop. It has to stop. Like, and I was just like, what's the limit on natural hair? You know,
Hmm.
is if because you're natural, it means that you have curls, then let it be curls. Don't let it be matted. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I say with any hairstyle that you wear, just make it look nice, you
Right.
know?
And that actually could be, that could be a moment of, a conversation about, someone else's hair. I don't know how often that you might have, conversations like that, like stating that either you do hair. I don't know if that's
All the
an
time.
appropriate moment for all
All
the
the
time.
time.
Okay.
All the time. People still ask me to do their hair now, even though
Hmm.
I'm in Texas, and they're like, "Where are you at? Can you do
When you
my
come
hair?" I'm
back.
like, "No."
But that's an important point regarding stating what exactly is the appropriate limit there, because the grooming aspect definitely is important.
That's all I say. Just let it be groomed. If it's natural, let it be groomed. If it's dreads, just let it be groomed. And it's not a scope to say, well, what does groomed mean? We know what groomed mean. Nice
Right,
looking, clean
right.
looking, just groomed.
Yeah, and I'm also hoping, sort of with that topic, that time has gone by. Society's a little more accepting, than it was before, and hopefully this just won't be something that's going to be needed to be dragged out, in the legal repertoire. That we're just not going to be litigating folks' hair. That's really kind of not where I want to spend my 2022
No,
um,
seriously, I hope so
and
too. I hope
beyond.
we can move past it because, like I said, it's like, why is it a topic? But I understand it's an issue, and there are a lot of people of color who suffer from, like you say, not being able to get a job because the way their hair looks, and that's just totally unfair.
Right. And even still, and just being mindful of time, I'll make this last question. Even still, I'm sure that you have to have people who are interested in wigs for the sake of not wanting to be natural, say, in the workplace. I feel like that still
Yeah.
has to be yeah, it happens. But at least you're able to, provide said option, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the cool thing. Actually, majority of girls who have the most hair are usually the ones who wear the most weave.
Hmm.
It's funny because you like, well, you got all this hair, but they like to wear weave. So yeah, I do have some women who are natural who opt for units. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know if it's necessarily because they're wanting to change their look for work per se, but wigs are
Hmm.
so fun. It's like
Right.
you can just be when you put a wig on, depending on the style, you really do feel like a different person. Like
And
so,
let's be clear, the fact that, as you said, you've introduced yourself and have, pulled your hair up to show folks, which obviously says, one, that says, I can do that too. Two, it's, probably much easier than one would think. And three, well, who wouldn't want to look at that and give it a try? Right. I mean, if you start the conversation,
why not?
it's probably a good chance that someone might want to pull a card out, pull your card out next. So,
Definitely so. Definitely so.
all right. Now, before we go, could you let everyone know where to find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Hair Rich Club, and I am on Instagram and TikTok, and I want to say Snapchat as well as I am Wigiana, which is IAWIGGIONA. My website is www.hairrichclub.com. And you can also find me working with Misty Blanco. I will be making an appearance on the Misty TV show, which I'm super excited about. You guys know that she's doing the Okani Rock Fest. If you happen to be looking for tickets and you want any type of information on that, make sure you contact this number at 310 61. I'm sorry, 310 661 8247.
Oh, very good. Listen, hey, your pitch is better than mine. I'm going to take notes of that. Afterwards. Amazing.
I
Okay.
appreciate you doing this interview with me today.
Of course. Hey, I learned a lot today. I'm glad that she connected the both of us. I'm going to be staying on top of you about this book.
Okay, I'm gonna get it ready. I promise. Like I got some huge things that I'm looking forward to releasing. Some huge things that I'm gonna be working on with Misty. So I believe that 2022 is gonna be fabulous. It's gonna be fabulous.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to play an outro. I want you to hang around right afterwards.
Okay.
And everyone else, you'll see me back on here soon.